Jim Kiritsy is the head strength and conditioning coach at Kennesaw State. You've been there with Coach Bohannon, who recruited me when he was at the Naval Academy. You've been there with him since the start when he came from Georgia Tech. So just tell us a little bit about, where you grew up and where you went to school and how you got into strength and conditioning.
Sure. I'm originally from a small town, Northbridge, Massachusetts. It's right smack dab in the center of the state. I grew up the son of a coach who's the son of a coach. So I grew up on a basketball bench, water boy, towel boy, shot chart, rebound chart. My stepdad also coached football for a while before he gave that up to spend a little bit more time in the fall with our family. So coaching was what I grew up around, and sports is very influential all across the board. I played high school football and baseball. Ran a little bit of track towards the end of it, but that was more of just trying to keep myself busy, really focusing on it. But I was really small growing up, and I fell in love with football when I started playing what we call Pop Warner up there, but you call it Little League, I think, here, a rec ball. Fell in love with football. I love the process of it, and I knew after my first day of football that I wanted to be a coach. I had grown up around it. I was inspired by the kids. I was inspired by everything that had to do with sports, but then football really, flipped the switch and took me to a whole nother level of appreciation for it. But I was small. So I got in the weight room. I was lucky enough to have a high school coach that would open the doors and let us lift weights. We had an old BFS magazine, and we just did whatever the magazine said. Mm-hmm. So, for a while, as I started to learn more and more, I was like, man, if I had a good strength coach in high school, I probably would have been better. I could have played it better at college. But as I look back, man, it was simple, but it was perfect. You box squat, you did cleans, you did pull-ups, you did sprints, jumped over stuff. It wasn't really organized, but it definitely made me a lot better. And, I fell in love with the process of the concept that if you work hard, results come. And that's the great thing about the weight room is that it doesn't matter if you're first string, second string, third string. If you work, you will see improvements. If you're consistent, you'll see improvements. So really to backtrack that, this is really important. Before I got in the weight room, I saw Rocky for the first time, right? And so I watched Rocky, and like everybody who sees Rocky, you get inspired by the training montage, right? And this is Rocky 1, or just Rocky to those film critics out there. And the next day I went for a run because that's what Rocky did. And I remember how far I got before I got a cramp and walked home. And the next day again and got further. And I was like, wow, this stuff works. And so I started doing whatever Rocky did. And I got in the weight room with Coach DeMasian and my teammates. And I was able to get bigger, stronger, faster, and make progress as a high school football player, baseball player, and was lucky enough to what I feel like maximize myself and played Division III football. So I played D3 ball at Norwich University, a small Division III school in Vermont. It's a military school, so I spent 4 years in the Corps Cadets doing Marine Corps ROTC, wearing uniform, saluting the flag, and living that cadet lifestyle. When I was there, we were fortunate to have a strength coach. So, I had great coaches around me, great teammates playing football, but what really, really hit me was the strength program. And so I realized there while studying PE and lifting weights, oh my God, there's an industry for lifting weights. That's up north. You don't even know it. If you're in a small school in the Northeast, you don't even know that you can have a strength coach. And so as I went through the process, I was volunteering in the weight room, helping out, training, playing sports. I played football and baseball. And then I made the decision that I was going to take the first coaching job I got the opportunity to upon graduation. If it was coaching football, I'd go coach football. If it was being a strength coach, I'd be a strength coach. My first opportunity came as a strength coach because my first strength coach, Justin Goulet at Norwich, he had moved upward and onward and was able to hire me as basically a professional intern when I graduated from Norwich. And so I went to the University of Vermont, worked there for 2 years, which was a great experience, assisting with every team out there, personal training to try to make money, training club teams, working camps, hustling, doing what I could because I wasn't making much money. After 2 years there, I knew I needed a mentor. I knew I wanted to get back around football. So I took a leap of faith, traveled down to Charleston, South Carolina, took a graduate assistant position, an unpaid GA spot under Donnell Boucher at the Citadel. It's the best decision I ever made in my life other than marrying my wife. He taught me so much. And there's a lot that could be talked about my time at the Citadel beginning to end, but ultimately I went as a GA, left as the associate director. And that's when I came to Kennesaw to help start things up here.
So you didn't know Bohannon prior. Well, I mean, you might have known Bohannon, but you didn't work with him at Tech prior to coming to Kennesaw then, right?
No, I did not. The real connection is the option, though.
Okay.
You know, the option is a tight-knit group. And so when Coach Bohannon was looking for a strength coach at Kennesaw, he called his people, right? Well, luckily he had people at the Citadel. And so my name got thrown around a little bit, and then he gave me a call, and I interviewed, and I got the job.
That's awesome. Now you've had to implement a culture with Bohannon at Kennesaw that has seen – I can't remember if Kel told me this or if you told me this on the phone the other day. Y'all are the winningest program in college football history having success in your first 5 years. Is that the correct?
That is what the statistics say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. So I think we're 48-15 in our first 5 years. If it's not 5 years. 5 years. Excuse me. It does go back by fast. So yeah, we've been able to implement something that we work very hard to. We've been very intentional about, and we've seen some success that we're looking forward to build on.
You used to have one of my linebackers, Chris Bird, that I had to retire, but God, that kid, man, he'd play 100 snaps every single Friday night between running back and linebacker, and he never missed a beat.
There are a few kids that have made an impact on me as much as Chris Bird, and it breaks my heart the way things went with him and his injuries. And I wish nothing but the best for him. And, but much love to Gainesville out there for that. Yeah.
He's been one of my favorites since he was in middle school. And then, he just his freshman year, that was the year we won the state championship. And so he just kept making plays on scout team just over and over. I mean, he'd pick balls off. This is just his freshman year, right? And he'd pick balls off and he'd make tackles. And I mean, he just, most kids in high school as a freshman, they're on scout team. They're just, they're a blocking dummy, whatever. Chris was not like that. Chris just went balls to the wall every single snap, every single day. And then I can't remember if it's like the 10th week of the season or the first or second round of the playoffs, he earned a starting spot. And then ends up starting at corner throughout the rest of the playoff run. Starts at corner in the dome and wins the state championship as a freshman starting corner.
And the kid was just hungry to work. He was doing it. He had a great attitude. We miss him here. We wish we would have been different from an injury standpoint, but it's a regret that he wasn't able to shine here. And it's just the way the dice were rolled and the way they landed.
Now, what kind of culture have y'all implemented, or have you implemented in the weight room? Because I know you're a really, really high energy guy. I've followed you on Instagram for several years, and listening to your voice behind the camera and things like that. I just kind of sit there and used to watch your 5 or 5:30 or 6 a.m. workouts or whatever the case may be. But talk to us about your culture that you've established and continued at Kennesaw in the weight room.
So first of all, I'm not going to take any credit for the culture in this building. It's Coach Bohannon's. What Coach Bohannon has done is he has outlined exactly what he wants from a team. He wants people to act, what things are supposed to look like, what type of athletes he wants to go on the field on Saturdays with. He communicates that with crystal clarity to his staff, and then he allows us to work. Right. And so he says, Jim, look, I don't know anything about strength and conditioning, but I know it is the key cornerstone to winning championships. Right. So this is what I want. I want a fast, tough, athletic team. Right. I want to be the fittest team in the fourth quarter. I want to be tough. Right. I'll sacrifice size for speed any day of the week. And I'm going to let you decide how this is going to roll. Right. He goes, some of the greatest experiences I had as a coach, this is what he was saying to me during the interview, was as a position coach at Georgia Southern and at the Naval Academy. He goes, I want to combine the athleticism of Georgia Southern, which to those of you listening who don't know about Georgia Southern in the late 90s, early 2000s, or just take a look at Georgia Southern. It's a culture they've got. So combine the athleticism of Georgia Southern with the discipline of the Naval Academy. And so he put me in charge of all aspects of accountability, and he said, go train my guys. And he empowers me to do that.
Yep.
So what I try to do in the weight room is I try to be as consistently positively energetic as possible. Now, a lot of the positivity comes from what the players are willing to put in, because we put out there as clearly as possible how you need to act in order to be successful in the eyes of a Kennesaw State as a football player at Kennesaw State. We know that you need to attack and finish the line. We know you have to have a yes or no sir mentality. We know you have to be adaptable on the fly. We know you have to have great body language. Right? You got to be coachable in all those areas. Right? And if you are, then things are awesome. Things are awesome. Right? But if they don't want to be on time, if they don't want to wear the right thing, if they don't want to finish through the line, if they don't want to squat to depth, then things get ugly. Right? But I also remember that I'm dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids. Right? And at 5:45 in the morning when they got to train, they might not want to train. Because they want to play ball. They don't want to lift weights. Right? So I need to bring an infectious enthusiasm that can get them out of their rut when they got to show up to the weight room and train. You got to understand, man, like, as strength coaches, we love this stuff. If we get a chance to lift, we maximize our lift because we want to, right? And it might be at 4 in the morning. It might be 7 o'clock at night, right? Our kids don't have the choice of when they get to train. They have to train when we tell them to train. They might not want to. So it's our job to get them up, get them ready so they can maximize their moments. That's what we're trying to do here. And I think that as strength coach's job is to motivate and inspire kids to want to maximize those moments, even when they might not want to intrinsically. You want to teach and educate, and you want kids to want to be great as every part of the process. But you know what? That's just not the real world. So we choose, myself and my staff, to show up, engage our student athletes, get them locked in, get them rolling, have some fun, and let's go to work. That's going to get more out of kids than expecting them to just show up and want to do it our way every single day whenever we tell them to do it. That's how I look at it. So we have a lot of accountability. We bring the juice as much as can be possible. And we tell the truth, coach. You know, like we tell the truth. Like we tell them what they need to be to tell them what they need to do in order to be successful. And when they aren't doing it, or when they're not raising the standard, we let them know, and we let them know with intensity, because there's a consequence for action or lack of action. And they got to know about that now, because it's going to serve them for the rest of their life.
Now, we'll get into, how you're implementing stuff during this quarantine in a little bit, but something you and I talked about on the phone the other day when I was talking to Kale, he and I just kind of stumbled across the Focus 3 thing, because he said you're a big podcast guy, and you got him started on Focus 3 stuff, which one of our coaches, who's actually a split back veer guy, or one of our former coaches, but he's at Hebron now. He got me on Focus 3. So for people who don't know what Focus 3 is, it's a company of leadership and development skills for your company, for your team. They go all around the country and speak to your company or speak to your team and talk about implementing the R Factor system, which the R Factor system basically is evolved around E plus R equals O. The E stands for event, which you can't necessarily control the event. The R stands for response, and the O stands for outcome. And so you can't control the event, but you can control your R, or your response, to help you better get the outcome that you want. Now, saying that, you and I talked about it briefly the other day. I tried to implement it in track because, like the 6 steps of the R Factor, the first one is press pause. Second one is get your mind right. Well, when you're at a track meet, and they say runners to your mark, or, so-and-so's up on the long jump runway or the shot put or discus circle, something like that. That's where you got to press pause, and you kind of, you take that deep breath, because it's your time to shine, or it's your time to compete for your team. And then you get your mind right. So those first 2 steps of the R Factor are really critical, especially in track when I coach it, but also in the classroom, in life, and stuff like that. But he said you try to implement that a lot, either in the weight room or in life, when you and him have talked about it. So how has it really helped you along the way?
First of all, the Focus 3 podcast, in my very, very, very humble opinion, is the best podcast for leadership out there.
Agreed.
And I really have loved it since Urban Meyer joined. I love hearing the stuff that they've done. I've gone back and listened to the older ones. They're fantastic. But if there's anything that I've learned in my 6 years at Kennesaw, and even going back just since I've been coaching, is that leadership is so critical. And there needs to be leadership, and a lack of leadership is felt deeply, especially when you've had it and then you lose it. So the E+ article is always big, but they talk about a lot of stuff. They talk about over communication. They talk about establishing your why. They talk about, having, what do they call it? Not bullet points, but things that resonate with the mind that you can connect to, and over communicating your cultural mission. So at Kennesaw, it's eat, effort, attitude, and toughness. You ask anybody, sound bites is the word they use. Sound bites. Yeah. It's sound bites. You ask anybody in the football department at Kennesaw State University what we stand for, they will 100% respond with eat. What is effort, attitude, and toughness? Period. It is what we are, and we are that to a fault. And I love it, right? I love it because we know what we stand for, and we know what we need to do in order to be successful our way. And Focus 3 podcast is like, it talks about that a lot. It talks about having that culture that lives inside from the core, from your heart, and that everybody understands, and everybody understands what it looks like, how it feels. So those are the things I love about the Focus 3 podcast. But here's what I try to implement. I have a very old soul, all right? And I love learning new tricks, and I love learning new science, whether it be exercise science, sports psych, whatever it's going to be. I respect it, right? But I believe that in training, you create how ready or unready, or prepared or unprepared you're going to be when shit hits the fan in a contest. So your response to something when you haven't gone through any challenges previously, your response is going to be shit, because you don't know how to catch your breath, refocus, recalibrate, reanalyze, and then make a good decision, right? Because all you're focused on is how hard you're breathing, or how much your back hurts, or how hot your feet are, right? So I try to create an environment, especially on the field, not so much in the weight room, but especially on the field, where our kids feel like they're at a damn near breaking point. That doesn't happen every time we go to the field. I'm not trying to kill my kids.
Of course.
I want my kids, all the athletes that I work with, I want them to experience moments where they want to quit. I want them to experience moments where they don't know if they can achieve the mission, because it's going to be, things are going to get hard in a game, and they need to have felt that way before. And then when we encourage them and we make them get back on the line and run it again, and they find out that they can do it when they thought they couldn't, the amount of confidence that you build in that moment it's so empowering. It's so empowering. And you feel like nothing can stop you. Okay? And if all you've done is read books about getting your mind right, but you haven't been in a moment where your mind is wrong, you actually have to get it right. The first time you have to do that, you're going to lose, right? The proudest moment I've had as a coach, as a strength coach, as someone who prepares athletes for challenges and contests, was when in 2017, we went out to Montana State in November. Bunch of Georgia boys went up to the Rockies, 20 degrees at kickoff. It snowed 14 inches the night before. We went out there, most of us with no sleeves on, right? And we found a way to beat a damn good Montana State football team on the road in December, right? And to win the game, we got the ball on the 3-yard line, all right, with like 5 minutes to play. And we went, with like 13 minutes to play. We went on a 20-play, 10-minute drive, kicked the field goal, take the lead, got the ball, picked the ball off, took a knee, and won the game. And you can't tell me that our kids would have been able to convert 2 fourth down and 3 third down situations if they hadn't gone through some shit in training and in practice. But we put them in those situations as often as is necessary, so they know what it's like to feel like shit, to know what it's like to feel like they don't think they can do it. But if we trust the process and just go out there and put it on the line, You never know what you can achieve, right? And so we try to create that. So our responses in that E plus R equals O equation are more clearly thought out. So when our heart is racing and our nose is bleeding, we can get back on the line and run it again because we know we can. So you might say E plus R equals O as an equation, but you got to put somebody in a spot where they've had to respond prior to game day. And Coach Bohannon does that at practice, and I've watched him do it all the time. My job is to prepare them for practice, prepare them for the game. So really long-winded response, and I apologize.
No, that's what I wanted, a long-winded response.
A lot of coaches don't like it, and I appreciate the science. I really do. But I think that our kids are going to be able to be more resilient in the face of adversity when I've made them feel like quitting, when they've gotten to the line when they don't think they can do it, and they find out that they can. That shit is empowering. And when you've been empowered by your own action, you got a kick in the ass by a coach, but you did the work, and you feel like you can run through a wall forever. And that's how I teach the response.
Yeah, and that's some great stuff. It was I really, as you were talking through that, I was thinking like, man, I just want to like cut this little snippet out of you talking right now and just kind of start, after you talk, just take like a Muhammad Ali clip and just like, I want to take what you just said and put it right there at the beginning of a motivational video. I mean, like that was some good shit, man.
Thanks. Yeah, I get fired up when I talk about this stuff, and I'm an old soul, so I gotta be careful who we share all that information with, I suppose.
No, you're good. You're good. It's so hard right now because this quarantine thing, and groups are smaller. We're not able to put on helmets until finally on Monday we can put on helmets for the first time all summer. Usually we've been in helmets, had spring practice, been in helmets since Memorial Day, blah 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 blah, and so now we're just now being able to put on helmets. And so that whole kind of mindset of putting you in a situation where you're uncomfortable and making you be comfortable, what am I trying to say? Get comfortable being uncomfortable. You know
Certainly.
what I'm saying? And we can't really put kids through that right now because they haven't had on helmets all summer. They haven't gotten acclimated to the heat. Now they're going to be uncomfortable next week and the week after that when we have to go, later in the afternoon, because we'll start having pre-planning. They're going to have to get used to that afternoon heat. But it's definitely different of a mindset period, these last 3 months than I've ever seen. And I'm sure every coach that's alive has ever seen, because I don't think anybody was coaching during the Great Depression and now. So
No.
Nobody's alive for those two things 100 years apart.
Yeah, quarantine threw us all a curveball. The one good thing is that we're all dealing with it. It's some places have been able to get ahead because of their resources, or maybe they're in an area that's not as affected by COVID. But it's a pretty level playing field. You know what I mean? Like it's global.
Yeah.
And it's real, and it's really thrown us for a loop. We're training smaller groups, groups of 15 in the weight room, 30 on the field, and we keep them split. But it doesn't give you an excuse to not get the job done, Coach. We did the best we could to engage our kids when they're at home. We sent them workouts home. We checked in. We had leaderboards. We did the best we could. But when we got them back, we had to just get back to work.
Yeah.
And we have to adapt and overcome. And I'll tell you this. I'm a huge fan of huge groups because you get this great player accountability. You get this great energy. Well, I'll tell you this. Small groups can give you some laser focus. We can be like Jedi.
Yeah.
We're in here with 15 in a room and 3 coaches. We can do some really good coaching. And I think that I've learned a tremendous amount in these past 5 weeks that I've had kids back on campus. We've gotten a lot better. The training has been more intentional. Our ability to put, not hands on because we can't really touch them very much, but like give them more specific individual feedback has been really positive. The smaller groups on the field has allowed us to really progress things appropriately. And so, we've been able to do some really good stuff, and I will take some of what we're doing now with me when we have options of what we want to do in the future when this thing is done and we've moved on. One to a rack, you can keep great tempo. You can have great accountability. You have the ability to take a kid and coach him on the rack, as opposed to having to pull him off because his partner has to get on the rack and do his set. And we've been able to do some really good stuff. My staff has really thrived in it, and forcing us to start slow because we didn't know what they've been doing for the past 3 months allowed us to progress appropriately. And hey, we had on June 15th, we started voluntary workouts. That week we had like 10 or 15. By the next week we had 30. Those 30 kids are probably in the best position that they've ever been in because I've ramped it a little bit slower.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're like hammering it. Okay. But they're also fired up because they're kicking ass and everybody just joining now is sucking wind in the back, throwing up. So there's, I've been able to learn it a lot, and I'm going to take the lessons from this and apply it to winter, spring, summers in the future. Like we'll definitely do small groups in the future, at least a few days a week, because I think you can do some really good stuff.
I'm going to take a commercial break right here. I'm really not. I'm just saying that so when I edit it later, I can do that. Because I always forget whenever I'm recording. So tell us about your setup. I was thinking about this about an hour ago. I totally forgot. You and I have met once when Andrew Thacker was there.
Yeah.
I came to talk special teams with Andrew because I had just been named special teams coordinator where I'm at several years ago. And so I wanted to go to him and kind of talk about some punt return schemes and stuff like that. And so he said, hey, let me show you around the office. And you had a workout going at the time. And so now I don't know about the coach's offices, but the weight room is still in it's basically a warehouse. Tell me if I'm wrong.
It's a warehouse. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have you have the racks on one side, then you have this big divider wall, and then you got your little turf area over there where I know you do a lot of med ball work, hurdle work, yoga, stuff like that. Kind of talk to us about the setup that you have in your weight room and because it's so unique, what makes it so special for you with it being as unique as it is?
Yeah, I was so lucky to be able to build a weight room. You know what I mean? Like on my interview, they brought me back to the back of a warehouse with giant ceilings and a wide open everything.
Yep.
And they had put in the turf because they knew that they wanted turf in there. The bay windows, like not the bay windows, like the loading docks, they put windows in so we can just roll up doors and there's tons of natural light. Place is awesome. In the back loading dock, we got 2 ramps we can do work on. We can do all kinds of crap outside, but I got a great facility, and that's because Coach Bohannon believes in the weight room. And to be honest, when we were starting this thing out, we needed an exclamation point in recruiting because our offices are in the warehouse. They just put drop ceilings in and a carpet, and they made it home. But we did something. We had the stadium, which is really nice. The campus is great, but we all knew we already had that. But we needed something to show recruits that we were bought in to this thing for the long term. And so he gave me a great budget to build a great room. So we got beautiful Sornex racks, got a play floor, power blocks. So I got 15 racks, inlaid platforms. Every rack is designed to be self-sustaining. So it's got 500 pounds of plates, barbell, power blocks from 12 to 127 pounds, bench, pull-up bar, TRX strap, 3 med balls, 3 kettlebells. It's fucking awesome, man. And then the other side has the turf. And so we can be really, really diverse in our training. And I try to be diverse because, remember, guys are going to be here for, 4 or 5 years. And we need to be able to give them different experiences to keep them engaged. I like to say engage and enrage, right? If you got to show up and do the exact same thing every single day, that takes a very, very, very special kid to be able to buy into that process. I want to create an environment that's dynamic in nature and always changing in a way where the kids feel like they're not always doing the same stuff. We know that we're always going to clean, squat, bench, but how are we going to do that? Are we going to use velocity-based training? Are we go off a block? Are we going to use chains? Are we going to do incline? We're going to do – there's all kinds of different stuff that we can do, and I try to make it as dynamic as possible. Move them around, run them from the rack to the green room for jumps, throw them at balls. I want to make this a dynamic environment. That's really, really important for me. Not only because that's the type of athlete we're trying to create, but I want our guys engaged. Not a whole lot of standing around. I want them to be aggressive. I want them to be competitive. And so we have a facility that allows us to do it, and we're pretty fortunate about that. I'm grateful every day.
Yeah, I mean, if I had the office that you had, I'd have as much energy as you did too, man. That thing's amazing. Now tell us that those platforms that you and I were talking about the other day that measures your force and explosion coming off on your squats. Tell us really what those are and what they do.
So we've got two things that we use from a measurement standpoint. We've got jump mats, which a lot of people have, and it somehow some scientist created an equation to track hang time and relate it to vertical jump, and it's very accurate. I'm not going to tell you it's perfect, and there's ways to cheat it, but we measure verts often. We're not doing it now because there's just too much carryover,
Right.
World. But do a squat, do a clean, come jump, see how high you jump, right? And that creates great competition. I might be able to jump 27 inches by myself, but when someone jumps 27.5, now I'm able to jump 28. And we want to create that competitive edge as often as possible in our facility. We want our guys having to step outside themselves in order to keep up with their teammates. That's an edge, man. We want competitors. We want dogs. We want gamers, right? We want to gamify as much as we can and make it as competitive as possible. So we'll use those a bunch, but we also have tendo units, and that's what measures bar speed. So we have various devices, but we've got 10 tendo units. We've got a couple other things that measure how fast you're moving the bar. We live with EAT, right? Eat, effort, attitude, and toughness, right? That's largely evaluated on the field, the way that we attack our runs, our conditioning, and our agility work. But we try to create an FTA, a fast, tough, and athletic athlete, right? So we want to be as dynamic as possible and violent as possible when we train. So when you're trying to move a barbell fast, but you have no feedback, you just think you're moving it fast if you think you're moving it fast, right? When a coach tells you to move it faster, you're like, well, all right, coach, I'll move it faster, right? But when you got a string on a bar, right, and you pop up and you have feedback, you can't argue that you're moving it fast or slow. And so that creates an intentional action. If we're trying to move, a back squat 0.8 meters per second and you're hitting 0.75, either you're too weak to move that weight fast or you're not moving it fast enough, right? Well, if you got anything about you, you're going to do everything you can to make that thing move fast, all right? So you can move 0.8. And there's nothing worse than you failing and then your boy behind you coming in there and fucking rocking it. Right now, you're motivated a little bit more. You're pissed off that you ain't the best. Let's get in there and move it a little bit faster, right? So it's a great way to create competition in the weight room. Great way to create an intentional action when you train the concentric portion of a squat or a bench or even a clean. But it's also a great autoregulator because if I want you moving something 0.7, but you're not, you got to lighten the weight. Because we know there's a 34% deviation of maxes day to day. Like one day, you squat 315, the next day you can squat 340, right? One day you squat 350, the next day you can only squat 290. Right? So percentage-based training is great, but sometimes it's off depending on your sleep, your stress, your training level, whatever it's going to be, right? But if we assign velocity with the movement, we can be really, really accurate with the weights that we're squatting. That's really, really good, not just from a competitive standpoint, but from an autoregulatory standpoint to keep kids healthy in season.
Now, last couple of questions. Who got you into weight training as far as like a big motivational factor, and or was there a person, or was it just the weight room in general? Because I know you were talking about it earlier.
Well, Rocky.
Just the movie Rocky just got you into it?
Rocky got me into just training because I didn't lift. I just ran.
Oh, I got you.
Rocky did shoulder press with an easy bar on the edge of a ring. You know what I mean? It wasn't like Rocky was in the weight room banging out cleans, not until Rocky Balboa, and they were very bad. Rocky got me into training, and then I lifted in the weight room because he was the freshman football coach and the varsity baseball coach, Coach DeMajian. I call him Uncle Juan because I grew up with him in my kitchen, drinking White Russians and telling stories because he grew up with my stepdad.
Yeah.
One of the best men in my life. I hated him half my life, but I've loved him forever. That love-hate relationship with the coach. He always told me the truth and held me accountable. But, he had us in there lifting weights, and when you didn't show up, he couldn't do anything about it. It wasn't like he could bring you into a 6 a.m. punishment or make you do up downs. He just made you feel bad. You didn't want to let him down. I didn't want to let him down. So I showed up and I lifted my ass off and I got bigger. Oh my God, it works. I became faster. I could jump higher. I could be a more competitive athlete. All those things happen as a result of the work that I put in the weight room. And so I think I was always an energetic kid. I was always, I was easily inspired by the rah-rah talks, the quotes, those motivational, montages and stuff. And so I think that just as I grew up, I fell in love with the process of training. I've always loved the process of ball and like practice and togetherness and put it all together. You can create a product that can go defeat somebody who might be a little bit more talented than you. I've loved that in my life. You combine who I am, what I grew up around, and then what influenced me as I came through. And that's just what you got. You got a guy who's got a raspy ass voice, who coaches loud, who holds kids accountable and believes that that's an important part of the upbringing. I am proud of who I am and what I do and what I've done. By no means am I done. No means have I done it perfectly. I've made a million mistakes. I plan on making 10 million more. But I think that what I do is important. I think that these kids that I work with need accountability. I think they need structure. They need consistency. And I'm going to bring it to them in the very best way that I can. So I've been influenced by a lot of people, and directly and indirectly. So I don't know really what to tell you, like who made me what. I think it's just a collection of all my experiences, the music I've listened to, the movies I've watched, the books I've read, the coaches I've had, and what I believe is important in this world and how we can hand it down to the next generation. That's how you get who I am.
Now, you didn't answer the question that I was getting ready to ask next, but what is your favorite book that just inspires you to be better?
Well, that's a wild question because I've read a bunch of books, and it's the most important thing in leadership development and continuing to sharpen the blade, right? So I'm going to give you a couple that have been very, very influential on me.
That's fine too.
Number one, Donnell Boucher at the Citadel had me read The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. It's the most important and influential book I've read regarding being a teammate or being a leader. It's significant, and I encourage you all to read it. It's short, it's written in fable form, and it's made me a better man. And it's a big part of our internship curriculum, and it's something that I try to do. I try to live by those principles every day, and whenever I see things breaking down, I can always find out where it is. So The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni was significant. I was extremely inspired every time I've read the book Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield, which is the story of the Spartan culture and the battle at Thermopylae. So basically the movie 300 just extended out and bloodier, right. Novelized, if you will. What a beautiful depiction of what purpose and pride and preparation and toughness and accountability and leadership. It's just so significant and meaningful. So, you've got one that is very business and leadership oriented. One is historical fiction, technically, because obviously the records from back then were great, but they're not complete. So those two books were really good. If you look at some others, Good to Great by Jim Collins is a great business book. Urban Meyer's Above the Line is a fantastic leadership book. So those books have been more significant to me than Triphasic or Super Training or Advances in this or that. I need to get better in those areas, but leadership, organization, inspiration, motivation, those things are the ones that really get me thinking outside the box. All the Malcolm Gladwell books, and all the TED Talks, those things are really inspiring to me.
Yeah. Well, Coach, I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us today. And I look forward to getting this thing out on August 12th.
Awesome. My birthday. I'll look forward to
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. What good timing.
I know. Well, happy early birthday then.
Appreciate it, man. I appreciate you putting this thing on, and I look forward to more stuff you put out. Thanks a lot for having me.
All right. Thank you.
Cheers, man.